So first of all, what's happening this week with these social giants? What's happening?
Well, Facebook is such a dominant force. I'm an attorney once upon a time. My son is attorney for a U.S. attorney in New Orleans. These are serious issues. A lot of the artificial intelligence, the AI, as you can see in the movie Social Dilemma, which was made by some of the people who started and were partners in the origination of these services, it gets people hooked, and it sort of plays into their fears and frustrations. And a lot of it plays into their fears and frustrations, which lead down the road, especially susceptible to teen suicide. I was head of a department at City University, New York, and we brought 62 professors together to determine the first media literacy course. And now there are hundreds of thousands of studies, and kids are extremely vulnerable in the teenage years because that's the self-esteem years. And 66% of the young girls have low self-esteem. So what they do is they play on that, and then they get them to move in a direction where they want to commit suicide. It's just like the program 13 Reasons Why, which was a disgrace because so many kids did end up. In fact, my development officer, his son, did that 5 years ago, and it's a horrible thing. So curbing them in is going to be very difficult. So it's nice to see people coming together and saying this is a gigantic issue. Whether they're on the left or the right or whatever, and saying we've got to protect our kids. I've got 15 grandkids, so I'm very much interested in this issue, beside the millions of people who come to movieguide.org every day.
What kind of response is Facebook giving to the criticism?
Well, as I told you, I was an attorney with the U.S. attorneys. They're giving these lukewarm, sort of objectionary, just trying to pass it off. We're doing our best. Well, they're not doing their best because they could have dealt with it. They're doing, well, we're taking care of some of these. They're not taking care of them. They should prevent them. They did do something special with Instagram. They were going to start a new service to reach more and more young people. I look at cognitive development theory and the media literacy. The young ones who are in the concrete stage are even more vulnerable than the ones that are in the self-esteem age. So if they had gone in that direction, the good news is they stopped going in that direction. And the better news would be if they had decided that they're not going to go in any of these directions and they're not going to play on people's fears. Fear attracts people to the news. When I was head of the department at Berkeley, et cetera, I teach people, if it bleeds, it leads. You want to have something that captures. You don't want to have something that's just a normal. This is the biggest fire ever. And people get afraid, and that gets them to watch more and more of Facebook, the news, or whatever else. So you have to say, we're going to fight against this, even though it may mean that we're not going to have as many teenagers going to Facebook.
What do you think is next in all of this?
I think sooner or later, if it goes down this road and you're going to get more and more offensive material and more design by the AI, and I refer to the movie Social Dilemma, which is excellent, you're going to have some government intervention. I'm pretty much against government intervention unless it's absolutely necessary. I think the early Paramount Picture cases actually hurt our country more than they were before that, when the studios were in control, because my father was a star. So I think government intervention is always a two-edged sword. Some of it will be good. Some of it could be limiting our freedoms even more. But it's a very problematic issue. And if they don't take their own it's like de Tocqueville said, we either have self-discipline or the whip of tyranny. And we don't want to have the whip of tyranny. So I hope that Facebook understands the word self-discipline means you don't, just play on the fears of our kids to get them down the path where many of them are extremely vulnerable.
While we wait for that, what would you suggest to parents to do in terms of helping their kids survive on social media?
That's the best question I've heard. And I just did another show about this, and I didn't hear that question. There's a lot of things you can do. There are great courses, great sites. We have a course on the media-wise family and the culture-wise family. We know how to teach kids to be media and culture-wise. In fact, one of my doctor-advised people who meets with me once a month. I called and they said, I can't talk because my teenage daughter is cutting. So I sent them the MediaWise family book, and they worked through all the exercises with them. You can teach children to be discerning on their own and to make the wise decisions. That's the point of this. And there are a lot of courses out there. Ours is a little bit more in-depth, academic, and more dealing with cognitive development theory and media literacy with a biblical base. So there are tools out there to help you teach your children not to go down that path. And it's one of my sad points that our development officer's son, before we could reach him, didn't do that. But this other person that I talk to once a month got the book, started working with her teenager. She was at the top of her class before the COVID shut down. She was very pretty. She went through all the self-esteem issues. She was cutting herself, and she stopped. And now she's got control of her life. And that's what you want. You want them to develop the plumb line to be able to make the difference. And that involves an educational process. And education comes from the Latin word educo, to lead out of darkness. You've got to lead your kids out of darkness, and you have to have the tools to